Another NFL season has come and gone, just like Super Bowl 54. Welcome, everyone, back to the Fourth and Long podcast. This is now episode 22 and is a special Super Bowl recap episode. I am, of course, your host, Ross, and I am joined once again by the bald beast, Jalen Johnson, and Fourth and Long UFC correspondent, Blake Campbell. Welcome to the show, fellas.
How's it going? I have hair.
I don't care. You're still bald. In the hearts and minds of everyone.
I was bald for like a year of my life.
Yeah, a year is long enough. Just keep it. But this week, guys, we have a recap and breakdown of what went right and what went wrong in Super Bowl 54. But we're going to start this show off by bringing back a old and fun segment, and that is the things in sports we hate. So I'm going to start this things off for you guys. Over the last week, more about the Super Bowl, I really hate how annoying Chiefs fans are because they're all gloating and stuff now on Twitter. And I really hate how Niner fans are on Twitter because they're all super angry and pissed off from what happened on Sunday. You can't say anything negative in any way about the Niners or even suggest that they had downsides in that game without some angry Niner fan getting pissed off at you on Twitter and trying to rant and saying that Jimmy G is actually good and that they don't choke in every game, in every big chance, and so on and so forth. And Twitter is a cesspool of awfulness the week after the Super Bowl. And it's annoying as hell right now. That's what I hate.
Yeah, definitely. My thing for this week was also NFL fans at the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of seems like there's always two sides. There's the one team that won, who's really excited and gets really cocky and talks a lot of trash on Twitter and Instagram and all. And then there's the loser team, who gets angry, says every single call made in the game was a bad call, calls the refs the trashiest refs of all time. They say the team that beat them didn't deserve it. Just little baseline things right there. In my opinion, the game was called very, in my opinion, consistently for both sides. There was a couple of calls that were iffy, but I think they made the same call both ways. So you kind of got a guideline of how they were going to go for the game. It wasn't like they were just making calls for one team and not the other. I feel like a lot of people wanted it to seem like it was like that, but it wasn't. It was pretty fair. The big one everyone's complaining about is the George Kittle offensive pass interference, and why I think it was a soft push that gave him the separation they called it on. Yeah. You have to think of it like this. These are elite athletes who don't need to launch somebody to the ground to get distance. Exactly. That little shove was all he needed to create space.
Yeah,
this isn't high school football or junior program.
We'll talk about that more because that will be in our recap part. Blake, you were telling me before we were starting that it's kind of a bad time to be a Kings fan right now, or at least irritating.
Yeah, it's not a fun season so far compared to last year when we had a lot of hope and games were close.
Is that the only thing you guys have anymore?
Frequent 20-point blowouts like we're dealing with this season. So
what I came a couple nights ago is brutal.
Yeah, but I mean even before that is what really frustrates me. Like one game we can't hit the fucking rim, can't score. Next game we come in here, we set a franchise record for making 3-point shots.
Makes no sense.
Well, they go and they beat the Clippers by a decent margin, and then they go get blown out by the Lakers the next game.
Right, and it's just
opposite. We got blown out, and then we won by 20.
Okay, that's still bad.
It's bad. I was really angry. I was like, how do you lose to the Lakers by 20, and then you beat the second best team, in my opinion, by 20? Like that makes
without Kawhi though.
It doesn't even matter if it was. We beat them by 20.
Hey, even without Kawhi, I think the Clippers still had the best bench in the entire league.
True.
So they
I
got
can agree with
depth,
that.
but the inconsistency, especially as a fan, can be really, really damn annoying. And I know
Very irritating.
I've experienced that as well, just from being a Sharks fan, and it's a pain in the ass. But that's the things in sports we
Oh, yeah.
hate from last week. Let's move right on into our Super Bowl 54 recap. So on Sunday in Miami at the Hard Rock Stadium, we had a matchup that was really good on paper, and I think it lived up to my expectations of it being a great Super Bowl. It was exciting from start to finish. It was a close and hard-fought game. At least most of it was. And at the very
Way better
least,
than last year.
I was about to say, at the very least, it was 100 times better than last year's snoozer of a Super Bowl. So, I mean, if we're just going to break this down,
Trash-ass
starting
game.
with the first half, it was a solid back and forth first half. I mean, the game was tied at 10 going to halftime. The first part of the game where I started to see things fall apart for the Niners was at the end of the first half. We saw some really questionable decision making by Kyle Shanahan. They stopped the Chiefs, forced the Chiefs to punt with the little under the 2-minute warning. The clock is at minute 47. But they don't call a timeout. They have 3 timeouts, and they choose on timeout. You even saw John Lynch, the GM for the Niners, up in their press box on camera trying to call a timeout, even though I don't think the ref saw him, unfortunately. But
I don't think they saw him at all.
You saw him trying to get the time. He obviously wanted a timeout. I want them to call a timeout. I think that's what they should have done, but they didn't. So instead of getting the ball at stopping the clock at 1:47, they didn't get the ball back until 59 seconds left in the half. That drive, they looked like they didn't have any emphasis to score. They ran the ball the first play, and then they took forever to get. They took like 13 seconds or like 20 seconds to get the next play snapped. And then they were just letting time tick off, and it looked like they were content with going to halftime with the game tied, which is one of the worst mentalities you can have, especially playing a offense like the Kansas City Chiefs that can score points in bunches, and that's what they did later in the game. We saw the one thing which just threw me off. They were moving sluggish. They were around like the 50, I think, or they were around their own 40. But then Jimmy G steps back and completes a 44-yard, really good pass to George Kittle that ended, as you mentioned earlier, ended up getting called back from a questionable offensive pass interference call. Personally, I think that it wasn't pass interference. Just going back to the play in what Kyle Rudolph made against the Saints in the wild card round, I did not think that was pass interference then. It was about the same play in yesterday's game, and I still don't think that's pass interference. He extended his arm, but he didn't really shove the defender. I'm okay with hand fighting between both the cornerback and the offensive player, so I thought they should have let that go, especially in a big-time game like the Super Bowl. You'd think they let them play a little more, especially on the offensive side. So I was surprised to see that flag get thrown. And after that, it gets called back. Their chances of scoring in the half are over, and they go into halftime with 10-10 lead, or with 10-10 tie. And I was really confused by that play calling. What did you guys think of that?
You go ahead, Blake.
I honestly, with Kyle Shanahan's play calling at the end of the first half, I really didn't have a huge issue with it. Just kind of putting it in terms of perspective, like if Kansas City's punting that ball, right? And from where they were punting it from, it was a good chance they're going to down it within, the 10, 15, 5-yard line. And he didn't want to give Mahomes a lot of time. If they get a 3 and out, say at the 5-yard line, and have to punt the ball back to Mahomes, he gets, let's say, 50 seconds to go and gain essentially, 20 yards. That's easy money for Mahomes. So I think he was playing it safe. I didn't really have that big of a problem with it. Yes, we would all like to see him go for it and call the timeout and preserve the clock and try and score as many points as you can and build that lead. So when you get the ball back in the second half, you can try and make it a 2-possession game. But like I said, I think he in the time at that time he made the right call. If he was sticking with his guns, if that was his philosophy, I think that he made the right call.
I just don't like playing conservative against the Chiefs. There's no such thing. They could have gone up. We've seen the Chiefs come back from every lead in this playoffs, like 24-point lead, 10-point lead. There was another 10-point lead that the Niners had. And you're never safe against the Chiefs. So I think if you have a chance to score, you take it, and you take that shot.
Sure, and I just think like I said, it depends on the philosophy of that individual that's in control of that team. And I think with Shanahan, I don't think he trusts Garoppolo at all.
No, you definitely.
I think that was very apparent last night and the games before that, leading into last night. Mm-hmm. I mean, dude threw the ball 8 times against Green Bay.
Something like that.
You got to put him in positions to make those kind of plays before it's the Super Bowl. Before it's the most important game of his life.
Super Bowl.
Yeah, but so that's asking a lot of Garoppolo.
See, it was a questionable way, at least in my opinion, to end the first half. Then in the second half, that's where the wheels came off the cart and everything just collapsed in front of the eyes of the 49ers sideline, of the fans in that stadium, and the fans watching around the world, especially those poor Niner fans.
Well, what's odd is I actually think the first half of the second half wasn't bad at all for the Niners.
No, the third quarter was fine. The third quarter was great because
in the first half of the fourth,
they came out at halftime and were dominating.
They were looking good.
They just didn't stick with the game plan.
10 points. Another interception of Patrick Mahomes. But the one thing that it was the fourth quarter that ruined the Niners and saved the season for the Chiefs. The Chiefs scored 21 points in the fourth quarter. They were down 20-10 going to the fourth. They ended up winning this game 31-20. The biggest thing that I was talking about is 21 unanswered points by the Niners go up and they put 17 unanswered on the Chiefs. And the Chiefs go up and put 21 unanswered on the San Francisco 49ers. What I was talking about with Kyle Shanahan, I disagree with his play calling. If we want to go back to Super Bowl 51, when he was the offensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons when they were playing the Patriots, they had a 28-3 lead, and they went away from the run game. For whatever reason, they still decided to throw the ball, and that's exactly what they did in this game. They had a run game that was averaging 6.4 yards per carry, and they ran the ball just 10 times in the second half. They ran no time off the clock, especially if you want to look where it really went wrong. The third quarter was fine, and the third quarter was great for the Niners, but that fourth quarter was awful. Kyle Shanahan has now blown the 2 biggest fourth quarter leads in Super Bowl history within the span of 3 seasons. That's pretty bad. They had 2 drives in the fourth quarter that really screwed them. One was at the 12-minute mark when they were still up 20-10. 5 plays, 17 yards. They only got 3 minutes off the clock. They had 2 rushes for 7 yards. Later in that, their next drive was at the 6-minute mark. This was after the Chiefs scored that touchdown to make it 2017. And with 6 minutes to go in the game, you want to know what they do? They have a 3-and-out, and they only run the ball 1 time, and they take a measly 1 minute, 3 seconds off of the clock. You can't have a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter and in the span of 2 drives take off 4 minutes and 7 seconds and do nothing offensively. That is the recipe for disaster, and that's exactly what that recipe resulted in. The Niners collapsed, and the Chiefs roared back, and there was no hope for the Niners after that.
Yeah, definitely. They kind of their whole entire game plan just kind of collapsed at the second half of the fourth quarter. You kind of saw it happening. You kind of saw from the beginning of the game. I don't know if anybody else saw it, but you kind of see the speed difference on the way both the sides were playing.
You definitely saw
just the look on their faces in that
Sammy
fourth quarter.
Watkins breezed by the Richard Sherman for that 44-yard
easily with the break inside and the break back out. That was
That was gross.
Yeah,
and
and then
Richard Sherman got shook out of his shoes.
yeah, and that happened a couple times in the first half. Chiefs players just making great moves and dropping 49er players. And it just kept happening. And it was kind of like, that's just that speed that tires you out. And it just kind of looked, in the second half of the fourth, you could see the look on Richard Sherman's face and a lot of other players' faces. They were kind of just looking like, what the hell is going on?
See, that's the part of it. I really want to credit Andy Reid. First of all, the one positive that I have from the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl is that I'm happy for Andy Reid. He deserves to get the monkey off his back. And with this Super Bowl win, I think he was going to make it into Canton without the Super Bowl win. But this win in Super Bowl 54 just solidifies the case for Andy Reid as a Hall of Famer. When he retires and when he's eligible to be put in the Hall of Fame, he will be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I guarantee that. Andy Reid deserves a hell of it because he had a great game with a great game plan and great play calling throughout. The first session they had when they went for on fourth down a couple times, then they had Patrick Mahomes with the read option to put that one linebacker having to make a decision in space. Do you go for the quarterback and just have Patrick Mahomes have an easy pitch, or do you commit to the pitch and just have Patrick Mahomes run it in himself? Andy Reid put his players in positions to make plays, which is one of the things I talked about in the preview show. He allowed the playmakers to go out there and make plays, and that Chiefs offense is filled with them. And Andy Reid called a great game, better than Shanahan, without a doubt. And I was really impressed by him. Well, honestly, I should have been impressed at this point. It was just fun to watch that play calling.
Another thing, too, piggybacking off of that, every player that you would expect to make a big play for Kansas City, Sammy Watkins, Tyreek Hill, Damian Williams, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, the list goes on and on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mecole Hardman, they all make a big play in this game.
Exactly.
They're all counted on, right? Mm-hmm. And Andy Reid finds a way to get each and every one of them their touch that's going to make a difference.
With offense like that, you'll need to have each player get the ball a few times. Each of them could make a big impact on the game with just one catch or one rush.
You just got to get him the ball the right way.
Exactly.
That's what makes it. Get him in the ball efficiently and let him be effective.
And that's exactly what that Andy Reid game plan does.
Great. Now I think another thing too that stood out to me with this game was just the difference. I think the level of play with the quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy the things that Mahomes kind of can do. I was reading an article on The Athletic. I forget who the author was, but he was just going really in depth about how there was a certain way that Mahomes during this game was attacking the rush, right? How he was reacting to Nick Bosa and Buckner and all those guys.
Mm-hmm.
There was a way that he was dipping his shoulder forward, stepping into the pocket, right? Stepping forward and making it way harder for these guys to get a grab at him, interrupt his shit.
So he can extend these plays. Pressure. At least in the second, the first half, that Niners defense, like I thought he would be, Nick Bosa was the Niners and Super Bowl MVP in the first half. He was causing all sorts of problems for Patrick Mahomes. He stripped him once. He got a sack. He was looking like a beast out there. But then that rush kind of disappeared in the second half, especially in that fourth quarter. And I guess that's what happens when you're going against an offense like that. You get tired. And especially when your offense can't sustain drives, you cannot get rest on the sideline, which makes it even worse, especially when dealing with a team like the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, I think he almost pulled the Jimmy Garoppolo. He had better stats than Garoppolo has through, at least in passing yards. But Patrick Mahomes, he did enough for the Chiefs to win this game. 26 for 42, about 270 yards. He had a couple touchdowns and a couple interceptions. But to be fair, one of the interceptions was on him. But the second interception was off a tip, and I don't really want to fault him for the interception.
I think due to the caliber of defense that he was going against, the game that Patrick played was excellent. I mean, really, he scored in every quarter besides the third.
See, the problem with a
Yeah.
quarterback like Patrick Mahomes is that he puts up a performance like this, we don't think it's good. But if there's anyone else doing this, we think that it was a great game.
Well, he still won the MVP, so clearly people think it's good. He still had his explosion
Patrick
for
Mahomes
21
is just,
points in the fourth quarter.
He's just at a different
Every
level,
week.
man.
Every week, it's one quarter where they just absolutely expose a team, right?
That's all they
And that
need.
was the
It's
big
crazy.
question. That was my question going into this game: is when that moment comes, when the Kansas City Chiefs are going to expose the Niners,
Mhm.
will they be able to A, stop that before it happens, or B, are they going to be able to come back for it? And the answer was in this game, they exposed them in the fourth quarter. I was thinking second or third quarter is usually when the Chiefs have their huge,
Yeah.
That
run.
second quarter is always huge for them.
Yeah, usually it's second or third. And we know because we play them twice a year, like we're very familiar.
And
The
both
Broncos
our
and the
teams
Raiders.
lose to them twice a year.
Yeah, that's true.
Fuck.
And so it was just interesting to me how they just boom, explosion, fourth quarter, no coming back from that.
It's really impressive
Yeah,
such an
how
explosive team.
quick the offense can score. They score points in bunches. Like they put up the 21 points against the Houston Texans earlier in these playoffs in a little over 3 minutes. That Chiefs offense from this season was ridiculous.
Well, and what helps too is their defense gets turnovers. They're not as bad as people make them out to be, especially like earlier in the season. This team, they have playmakers on the back end. They have
Mhm.
Chris Jones that's batting down passes at the line.
I think he had
You
like
know,
3 or 4
Tyrann Matthew
deflections.
roaming the. So I mean this was a really good matchup between these two teams. In my opinion, the better team, the team that was more explosive won. I don't know if necessarily the better team won because I think all around, besides the quarterback position, the Niners have probably the more complete team.
I would agree. If you took Patrick Mahomes from the
I would
Chiefs and
agree,
put
too.
him onto the Niners, that team would be unstoppable.
And
It's
the
just the
Chiefs wouldn't be
size,
making
man.
playoffs.
They have freaking 20 first rounders on defense. It's ridiculous, Of course, I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean.
That whole front seven is it's unreal.
Yeah.
But Mahomes, great game. Obviously won the MVP. We'll see if he.
What do you think about Damian
Williams?
Williams getting snubbed?
See, we'll talk about it. Hold on to that. We'll bring that up in a second. Jimmy G in the biggest game of his life, the first time he's in the Super Bowl without being the backup to Tom Brady. He comes up short, 20 for 31, 210, 1 touchdown with 2 bad interceptions. He had 1 interception where it looks he was actually closed his eyes when he threw it. It looked like he said, "Screw it. I feel like George Kittle's somewhere over there. I'm just going to throw up and hope for the best." And it got picked off, and it really should have been taken back for a pick 6, but the Chiefs defender just couldn't stay in bounds.
Yeah, he was running too fast towards the sideline.
Yeah. Jimmy G, late in the game, he missed a wide open pass to Emmanuel Sanders. Emmanuel Sanders beat too deep. It would have been a touchdown to, I believe, to at least tie the game, maybe go ahead. And he
I think it was
took the lead
20 to
back.
24 at that point.
Yeah, so he would have taken the lead. But he overthrows Emmanuel Sanders by a good 5 yards. And it's not like
Yeah,
Emmanuel slowed down.
that long
That
shot.
dude was sprinting the whole route. And
Full blaze.
And Jimmy G just overthrows him and he misses that. And yeah, like I say, throw that got picked off. Jimmy G was making inexcusable mistakes that if you want to win the Super Bowl, you can't do what he did. He got away with it.
At all.
He got away with it against the Vikings and against the Packers because he didn't have to do much. That run game was killer for them. But when you go away from the run game, especially when it's working for you in the first half, and you try to put the game on Jimmy G's shoulder, it doesn't end well. And we saw that this weekend.
I think they're a team that very much has to stay on schedule, Once they kind of took off their tracks, there wasn't really any coming back from that. Like we were talking about earlier, how are you going to expect a guy, Jimmy Garoppolo, to come in and make plays that he hasn't made all year?
Exactly.
It's not very realistic.
That's just bad
he's not been
coaching.
put in that position. So
You cannot have a guy that's been pedestrian and just been a game manager through the playoffs and through most of the season, if we're being honest. You can't expect him to go on the biggest stage of his life and try to throw and make these big-time passes, make these big-time reads and plays with his feet and his arm, and to expect him to thrive in that kind of situation against a good a secondary unit that the Chiefs have. It's unreal to think that would have worked out well, and obviously it did not. One of the guys I want to talk about, besides just the quarterbacks, is undrafted running back Damian Williams. Absolutely shined this Super Bowl. At 17 carries, 104 yards, 1 touchdown, and he had that one 20 or so-ish yard touchdown late in the game to ice it. That guy played out of his mind, and it was really cool to see a story like him going undrafted, got cut from the Dolphins, joined the Chiefs, and he was a huge factor in this game for the Kansas City offense. Let's see. Did you guys see me in the tunnel after the game with Mostert?
Oh no.
You guys catch that one?
No, I didn't see it.
Really cool video. When all the Niners were running out the field, and going to the locker room, he had Damian Williams, instead of celebrating with the rest of his team, first he went over to the Niners tunnel, called up with Mostert, and they swapped jerseys because, of course, Mostert was also undrafted, and both those guys had unbelievable playoffs this year, and Damian Williams had the game of his life in the biggest game of his life. But, I mean, all in all, the Super Bowl, Niners did well the first half. They did well the first 3 quarters, and then everything gets blown up in the fourth quarter because they go away from the run game, they go away from what's working, and they try to be a team that they just aren't in the worst time possible. You don't become a new team with a new game plan with a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl. You don't, and to me, that was absolutely unexcusable. All right, fellas, so moving on from that, we're going to take this into the return of this fun segment, which is the overreaction segment. For those that don't know, in this segment, I'll have a list of statements, and we will determine if those statements are an overreaction or not. First statement of the night is Kyle Shanahan is to blame for the 49ers loss in the Super Bowl. Overreaction or not, fellas?
That is definitely not an overreaction. I think that is just right. I think Kyle Shanahan you kind of see it in the third quarter, and especially going into that middle of the fourth quarter when the Chiefs started surging. The Chiefs were kind of, I wouldn't say 100% figuring out the 49ers run game, but they were definitely starting to stuff a lot of the plays that's starting to matter. And I feel like Kyle Shanahan kind of started having flashbacks of that Falcons game, and he definitely went back to trying to throw the ball. And then he realized Jimmy G's still kind of crappy. Mm-hmm. And then it was too late to run the ball again because now you're down. And then I feel like he didn't know what to do. There's at one point, it did snap to him on the sideline, and he was like looking at his play card, looking back up at the field, and just looked back down at the play card, and it looked like he had no idea what he should do next.
That was the definition of flustered.
Yeah, he was looking at it, and I was making a joke at first, just kidding around because I was around 49er fans. And then I really looked at him, and I was like, he looks like he is confused on what is going on right now. Exactly. And they still had the lead. But he just looked like he didn't know what to do.
It looked bad. Blake, do you kind of share the same opinion on this?
Yeah, more or less. I think there's a ton of blame to be shared with this game. Mostly between the quarterback and the head coach, I'd say. But and then a few players individually on defense. But yeah, I definitely think this statement is not an overreaction.
Me neither. I think Kyle Shanahan is the man to blame for the loss. He's not the only man to blame, but he is the number one guy to blame because it was a play calling. It was a play calling that ended up effectively screwing the 49ers out of a Super Bowl victory. And Shanahan's gone to live with this one for a while, and this is just another big old blemish on his resume. Second statement is Patrick Mahomes wasn't the real MVP of the game. Overreaction or not?
Overreaction.
Yeah, definitely an overreaction.
Hey, it's worth the question. I just wanted to see what
Let
you guys
me
thought.
let me expand.
Yeah, you
Please.
go ahead.
Have the floor.
Patrick Mahomes is a stud. That motherfucker. Excuse me. I forgot we can't cuss. That that son of a gun is
Mother
the
trucker,
real
dude.
deal. He throws passes with his eyes closed, with his left hand, freaking doing a ballerina spin. Who knows, right? I mean, he
Oh,
did
so that was
everything last game.
Jimmy G was trying to do a Patrick Mahomes impression when he closed his eyes,
He was trying, but clearly he's not the
and
same
that two
dude.
hand throw was that for style points.
Yeah, that was just. I mean, come on. He might have been trying to imitate Gronk, but didn't know where he was at.
Gronk spike.
But but no, I mean, Mahomes, he gave you a little bit of everything. I mean, he runs for a touchdown. He can run the read option. You know, he can hit the big pass, 80-yard bomb. He can just do everything. He makes the right decision at the right time. He reads the game. You know, he gets the ball into the playmaker's hands. He's always looking down the field, even if he is eventually going to have to scramble. Yes, he made a couple mistakes yesterday, but he shows you that resiliency, right? He shows you that willingness to keep throwing deep, to keep taking those shots, to keep trying to put the ball in the people that's going to make a difference in the game's hands. So I think that statement is an overreaction because Patrick Mahomes by far made the most plays yesterday.
Yeah, I'm definitely agreeing with Blake. That is an overreaction. I could see the only person, as I said earlier, the only person I think could have got it other than him was Damian Williams. I
Mm-hmm.
think Damian Williams had a great game, but then again, Patrick Mahomes threw one of those touchdowns, and the last one was kind of the defense broke down, and he broke for a big one. He still had a great game. Don't get me wrong. I'm not downplaying his game at all.
No, you're
But
not.
Patrick Mahomes scored the first rushing touchdown. His rushing saved the game, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Him running the ball saved them on a lot of third down plays and a lot of big plays. I feel like him running the ball kind of made the 49ers think like, okay, we can't 100%. When he goes to pass, we can't just drop back and let him do what he wants
Exactly.
because he might break for 15 or 20 on it. And I feel like that's kind of like that Lamar Jackson effect. You don't know if he's going to run, so you can't really defend pass all the way. And that's where Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins started getting open because you kind of can't just full out drop back 20 yards and cover passes if he might just run past you guys.
I feel that. I think Patrick Mahomes, he wasn't the only reason the Chiefs won. Damian Williams had one hell of a game. I think you can make the argument that Damian Williams deserves MVP, along with maybe Chris Jones as well. But when it comes down to it, Patrick Mahomes plays the quarterback position, and he made the plays when he needed to, even though he didn't have the prettiest stat line, especially by Patrick Mahomes standards. I think he was more the MVP by default.
Patrick Mahomes touches the ball every single play of the offensive, offensive side of the ball.
He's so does the center by that logic.
He shoulders the weight,
No, I think if every player performs evenly, the quarterback is always going to win MVP. And that's just the case. Jimmy G earned the MVP, but he also more or less won it by default.
I don't know. I think, in my opinion, 3 touchdowns is a threshold. You got to get 3 tutties if you want to get MVP and not be a quarterback.
Yeah, no.
Or like a game-winning interception or something like that.
You totally have to overperform the quarterback in order to get MVP honors.
Yeah.
Third statement of the night: Jimmy Garoppolo cannot win the big one.
Not at all.
Overreaction or not?
No, that's not overreaction.
I think right now it might be an overreaction, but if I'm looking down the road, honestly, I don't think this is overreaction. Jimmy Garoppolo will never be able to win the game by himself in a big-time situation like this. Sure, he could win regular season games every once in a while just by his arm talent alone, but he's not going to be able to win Super Bowl games and playoff games by himself. He's never going to be able to be a Patrick Mahomes and just put the whole team on his back and make plays every time they need to. He needs a run game. He needs the offensive line. He needs a good receiving core. And he needs a good defense to back him up. He's in one of the most perfect positions as a quarterback can be. And he still underperforms at times he's needed. I know he has like 7 game-winning drives, but in the big games, I don't see Jimmy G being that clutch guy that a coach can just say, "Hey, man, go win this game." Just like coaches say that to Aaron Rodgers or to Patrick Mahomes or to Tom Brady in his prime, or to Peyton Manning as well. I don't think you'll ever be able to say those words to Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah. Definitely. Kind of one of the ways I looked at this game is when I look at my team is Arizona Cardinals. I kind of see the Cardinals offense this season as they were kind of look like the Chiefs offense, but they didn't have enough experience or anything to actually have that result. And so when I was looking back at the 49ers versus Cardinal games, I kind of saw where the 49ers ended up winning was experience and coaching experience. And so when I saw this matchup, I kind of saw it as a very, very much improved version of the Cardinals. And so I kind of saw if you can have that close of a game against the Cardinals and barely sneak out of it, when you have a better experienced quarterback, better defensive scheme and players, and you still have that speed, that was what killed the 49ers in the earlier season matchup. I kind of just saw it as, it was going to go crazy, and it was going to fall down on Jimmy G. And then when it fell down on Jimmy G, as I said a whole bunch of times this season, Jimmy G is not a great quarterback. I'm not saying he can't become a good quarterback, but right now he is not. He
still has the time.
Yeah, he still has a lot of time. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but I knew it was going to be a close game, and in close games and big moments, Jimmy G just has not shown up.
Yep.
It hasn't happened yet, and so I'm going to go off of what's happened so far, which is it hasn't happened. He's performed in regular season games, but playoffs, he's only had 3 of them, and he hasn't had to do anything in the first 2.
No.
And in the third one, he showed his true colors, which he's not a Super Bowl ready quarterback.
Blake, do you kind of share the same sentiments that Jalen does, that Jimmy G just doesn't have it?
I'm not going to pull the trigger on that one to say that.
So are you still sticking with overreaction for now?
I think for now, because it's still a wait and see approach, right? Like he just got, and according to the Niners, right, and all the Niner faithful, they're built to last, right? They're built for the long haul.
You mean the faithful that wasn't there for the past 4 years?
So they're going to be in the Super Bowl next year, right? They're going to be in the Super Bowl the next 3-4 years. So we're going to see Jimmy Garoppolo next year in the Super Bowl, and we're going to see if he can win the big one, okay? Then we'll know. Next year, we'll see his winning percentage either go up.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll be back next year anyway, but that's a different discussion, isn't it? So we're going off mostly we're spot on, but that last one might be an overreaction for now. That's mostly the Super Bowl stuff. And just before we wrap up for this week, football isn't over, everyone. We still
not at all.
Next weekend there still will be professional football being played, and that's because the XFL, the Extreme Football League,
it is back.
The one and only Vince McMahon is back and better than ever. We have the XFL bringing back their league, but they're not going to be like the original XFL. They're not going to be crazy with all these stupid rules and he hate me on the back of the jerseys. We're going to have
a great jersey though.
Oh, it's a great jersey. I'm not knocking it, but we are going to have a league that is going to be innovating the way football is played. They're going to be having more football, less breaks, with different rules. One of my favorite rules actually is probably not. I'm interested. One of the biggest changes is that they have a double forward pass. So that's going to open up playbooks tenfold.
Yeah, that's going to be crazy.
The thing I'm looking forward to most is the change in overtime rules. College has their overtime rule, which every team gets on 25, and they drive the ball and they go back and forth until someone doesn't match the other team's score. Then in the NFL, you have the 10-minute, at least in regular season, you have the 10-minute sudden death, except it's only sudden death unless you kick a field goal. Then the other team has a chance. But in the XFL, they have a shootout style where you pretty much match scores until someone can't, just like in hockey. And I'm really excited about that, to be honest. And then they also have the
Yeah.
new conversions. You have, like, I believe is from the 3, it's a 1-point conversion. From the 5, it's a 2-point conversion. From the 10, it's a 3-point conversion. And I'm really looking forward to this. Most importantly, I want to see these new rules and see how they affect the game of football. But more than anything, I'm just happy that we get more football. We get spring football. When's the last time we can say that?
That's honestly
Let's not talk
everything
about the
I'm
AAF.
happy about.
We're not talking about that.
Yeah, that was unfortunate. That's what that was.
God bless XFL, fellas. Are you guys
God bless it.
excited as I am?
I'm really excited actually. I would love to have football year round. I kind of get sad when it's kind of just that in between time. Like there's other sports I watch, but there's just for me there's nothing like some good old football.
No, nothing.
And so
Blake,
so
have
I'm
you
just
pledged your
I'm excited
allegiance to any one of the 8 teams yet?
I really haven't looked too much into it. I'm kind of cautiously optimistic about this.
Yeah, I think we all are. I will not be surprised if it goes down in flames, but I really hope it
just
doesn't.
because of how the past experiences have been with this, secondary league. I don't know if it's built to last or not, and we'll see. I hope it is, because I was just looking through this article of just highlighting one or two players of each team to watch, and there's actually some decent talent in this league, like wide receiver Antonio Callaway, running back Christine Michaels in there. There's some interesting defensive end Sean Oakman, who was previously accused of sexual assault and was now found innocent as of 2019.
Hell yeah!
Projected to be the first overall pick of 2016.
One of the best memes we've gotten out of the football.
The amazing meme.
The Sean Oakman memes were pristine for a few months.
Yeah, let's see if that guy can have a really good season in the XFL and get some looks in the NFL, right?
I hope he does, because his career was kind of derailed by that accusation. And now that the man, he's a free man, and he's
still only 27 years old. He's 6'9", dude.
He's a monster. I just want to see him along with all these other talents. I just want to see him ball out. One of my favorite things about the failed league of the AAF was seeing all these guys with second chances at football careers and making it in the NFL. They had a couple guys. There's a guy on the Broncos roster who was making impact plays every game, and he played in the AAF. I just want to see these guys live out their dreams and get that second chance to make it to the big time. That's the most beautiful thing about this league.
Yeah, I feel like that was one of the things I was kind of looking forward to, because there's a lot of guys out there who they didn't make the NFL because just it wasn't their time yet. They needed more time to be groomed and get their skill.
There's plenty of talent in the XFL still.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of guys, after they miss that first shot,
is in the XFL.
Yeah. It's just after you miss that first shot, a lot of guys, they just give up and they stop training, or some try to overdo it and they get injured, or people settle for practice squad and they don't try to, really get that mentality to be the best anymore. And so I feel like having this league where people can still play and have a chance to, make that move to the NFL if they feel like it later on, I feel like it kind of adds it's a betterment of football in general. It gives another chance for everybody, exact second chances. And I just think it's great for football as a whole.
See, my thing is, who doesn't want to see these players, these young guys, these young men chase their dream and get a second chance at succeeding at one of the biggest goals you can ever have, and that's making the NFL.
Definitely.
I just want the best for it. Go Roughnecks. I just want to see the XFL succeed. If the XFL succeeds, it's good for everyone. It's good for football fans. It's good for the players in there. And it's good for the NFL teams that might get new additions to the rosters. And it'll be good for ESPN, CBS, and Fox that all have TV deals with the XFL.
And some nice new gear to wear.
Oh, yeah. It's great. Best of luck to you, XFL. I can't wait for this Saturday. But with that, folks, we're going to wrap things up on this week's podcast. Thank you for joining us for our recap, our overreactions about the NFL Super Bowl. Thank you for joining us on this wild ride of a NFL season. Our show was kind of founded in the preseason, right before week 1 of the NFL back in August, early September. And we made it all the way through the end of February. And
still here, growing.
I appreciate all the listeners that so far. I appreciate the new ones. I appreciate you two guys for continuing to rain down some of your knowledge upon this show.
Yeah,
Oh
no
yeah,
problem.
my pleasure, bro. I don't want you to just be out here spewing a bunch of nonsense to all the listeners.
You gotta check my nonsense every once in a
I
while.
had to bring
I
some
appreciate
substance to this.
Exactly. You can't just have you blabbering for an hour.
that.
Quality control
I
unit
hate you
right
guys
here.
so much. Thank you everyone for joining us this week. Stay tuned. We're going to be recording something new on Friday. Keep your eyes peeled for this weekend's action. Over on the YouTube channel. Keep it locked. Spotify's coming soon. That's all I need to say. Big things are coming soon, and you guys need to stay tuned. You can do that best by following us on Twitter at Fourth Long Radio. That's with a capital F, capital L, and a capital R. Thank you guys so much for tuning in this week, and we will catch you guys in the next video.
See you.